Most of our stories are in fictional worlds, which are very different from our own. Writers call this world building. But what is it exactly? And how do you know if it's good or bad world building? And what is it about fictional worlds that makes those places so inviting? So, I did some thinking, some research, some scouring of the internet archives, and after 2 days, I found my answers. Now, foreplay is important, so please just bear with me. I promise it'll all come together. Huh? Huh? But as I said, world building is simply the fictional worlds that writers make for their stories. And it's not just the transportation, the laws, or physics, or simply what's added into it. No, world building is also the people, the logic that those people have, their perspective, the religion, the culture, the sports, the trolls, heck, even the food. That is world building. This is world building. But I have a question for everyone. While researching this, I had an epiphany. Often, when people talk about world building and the stories, they almost never mention our very own reality. This version of Earth where me and you are right now. You watching this video where you live. And for those who don't know, we live in Earth 1.1. Hello. But seriously though, even with some stories that take place in our world or, a planet similar to Earth or our timeline, people tend to not talk about the world building in those worlds, as if world building should only be about monsters or magic, AI, or maybe the multiverse. And my question is, does world building only matter when it's different from our own? Now, let me know your thoughts because my thoughts are, despite the wars, despite the craziness some of us are currently going through, Earth's world building, our lore if you will, as crazy it may have been in the past, is damn near the best out there. Because simply put, our world building is the first ruler that others use to measure their fictional world. Whether it's the transportation or everything else, our world is their foundation. Though I will say this, if there's a God out there and is watching this, hi. But some of these guys have magic, aliens, cursed spirits. My guy, take notes, take notes. Anyway, and the answer to this question is actually in the following question. It's sort of tied together. Tell me, what makes fictional worlds so inviting, so attractive, so enchanting? Simply put, what is the reason that we're so drawn into them to the point that even after we finish the show, it stays with us for years, even decades? Well, the answer to that is novelty. Maybe some escapism in the story and the characters, but I find novelty to be a nice answer. Now, our brains, an incredible piece of bioware, though it may seek comfort foremost, but it loves novelty. To witness and comprehend something unseen before, and world building tends to be just that. Instead of something you're already familiar with or accustomed to, something that works from a different perspective always triggers curiosity. And I love world building. I remember one day when I was creating my first story, I spent over 3 hours on just world building alone. And I made the mistake of going to Reddit to ask for advice because that's when I realized that there's levels to this shit. Because I initially wasted like 3 hours of my very limited lifespan, but people are out here spending hours, days, months, heck, even years on just world building alone. No story, no plot, no characters, no nothing. Just world building. Spending hours just recreating everything is crazy to me. And I commented on one guy's post who had not just created his own food group, but his own religion, even a leaf, bruv. Imagine creating a different species of leaves. I asked him, isn't this just a tad bit excessive? Then he told me that he does this because he likes it. And that's when I realized that world building isn't just a storytelling aspect or a passion to some, but it's an art. Just like boxing, just like football or basketball, painting, knitting, or drawing, whatever you're into, it's an art. An art I may never understand at that extent, but an art nonetheless. And just like with any art, there's good and there's bad. But how can you tell the difference? Now, the answer is very simple, almost boring even, but seamlessness. Seamlessness. The best world building isn't the most creative, the most imaginative, or the world with the most rules, or even one similar to our own. No. The best world building is the world building that quietly exists in the background, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, and the other things aren't exempted. So long as they are quietly integrated into the story, then they're good. Otherwise, when you hear this story talking about its rules or systems, they've lost the plot. And maybe it's because of anime, but this
The young man was shocked, and for good reason.
Even the simplest moves required every ounce.
narration, I hate that. I don't like it. Yeah, there are movies and shows with this, but for them, the story is told from a person's perspective or a character in the story telling the story, and that makes sense. Not the author, but anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Since I've already explained that world building can basically come from your imagination on some Disney shit, I must ask something that has been bothering me for some time now, and that is, should world building or fictional worlds be realistic? I know that sounds stupid to some people, but you'd be surprised to learn that people online are divided over this topic. People will sarcastically tell you that, God forbid a story is grounded, or God forbid things have consequences. And I love grounded stories, but I also want to have a dragon in my story without having to worry about bone density, aerodynamics, biology, and all of that limiting stuff. And those people would hear this and say, well, people who think that way just can't keep up with the science, and they're the ones who fell asleep in class, which is, true. And I love science, but this really annoys me because the whole point as to why I'm creating a fantasy story or a fictional story is because it's not realistic. Golly, go and watch a fucking documentary, you twat. And this is something that I actually say: science fiction loves science, but science doesn't love science fiction back. It's one-sided because God forbid I want to have super speed, but now I have to write a story thinking about what will happen when those solid air particles either turn me into mincemeat or leaves open a vacuum that destroys the whole world. And that's never actually pleasing a scientist with science fiction because although it's science fiction, it's just not realistic because again, it's not science, it's science fiction. Because take Neil deGrasse Tyson and Interstellar for example. He said it himself. He likes the movie because it has some of the best physics. And if you guys don't know, the movie itself published scientific papers on black holes and shit. And Neil Tyson loves the movies. It's fantastic. It has the best physics. But, yes, there's a but. His issue is that they shouldn't have wasted time and money sending people to space through a wormhole because the crops were dying. No, instead, that time and money should have been used to fix the issue of the crops. And I agree with him on that one. But a movie where they do that isn't a movie worth watching now, is it? Some screenwriters may be able to do that, but they'll be fighting for their lives. And also, the movie clearly shows that the scientists were trying that and were failing. Anyway, the reason why we have fictional worlds is because there's a gap that the real world isn't filling. Yeah, I know, escapism and stuff. And yes, I want the authors to be smarter when creating these stories, but not limited because of physics. So, in conclusion, world building is the element of a world very different from ours, but not always. And we tend to love it because of its novelty, or maybe the characters or the story, I don't know. But what I do know is that it should be integrated seamlessly in the background, a backdrop if you will. World building is the gentle giant with a loud voice, but it's often heard well when it whispers, cause when it's loud, it's bad. And should world building be realistic? No, you twats. World building should be whatever you want it to be, because in a story, I prioritize storytelling over realism. Heck, I think if there's no controversies or plot holes, any critic would have similar thoughts as me. Cause what's realism in a world of fiction? Come on. And although these science types of people annoy me, I realize that what I really hate is their whole approach. Offering criticism not about the story, but the world feels very weird to me. Mind you, I grew up watching Mad Pat and Kyle, and although I never understood some of their physics talks, I loved and appreciated it. But hey, that's just a theory. A writing theory. And cut. Nah, I don't know. Feels weird. But similar videos will come, I promise. So don't forget that bell notification. And I also have a gram, and well, that's all, folks.
Is he allowed to say that?
See that?
Legally?
Legally?